The Trojan War, when a prince stole a queen. Did you know that one of the most legendary wars in human memory began not with armies but with a single forbidden love story? It all started in a world where gods walked beside men and the line between myth and history was still blurred. The story of the Trojan War has been told for over 3,000 years. Yet behind its poetry and heroism lies a real echo of power, pride, and destiny. Let's travel back to the Bronze Age, to the shining walls of Troy, where beauty and betrayal shaped the fate of nations. Our story begins in the halls of Mount Olympus, the home of the Greek gods. One day, a grand wedding took place. All the divine guests attended except one, the goddess Eris, who was known as the bringer of discord. Offended by her exclusion, she arrived uninvited and tossed a golden apple into the gathering. On it were 3 simple words: asterisk to the fairest. Those words lit the spark of rivalry between the goddesses Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Each believed she deserved the apple. To settle the matter, they turned to Zeus. But even the king of gods refused to choose among them. Instead, he sent them to a mortal prince named Paris, son of King Priam of Troy. The choice would rest in human hands. Paris was a young man known for his fairness and charm. One by one, the goddesses tried to sway him. Hera offered him power. Athena promised wisdom and victory in war. Aphrodite whispered a different kind of prize, the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Her name was Helen, queen of Sparta, already married to King Menelaus. Paris chose love. With that decision, the path to war was sealed. Let's float over to the shores of Sparta, where Helen lived in peace, unaware that her beauty would soon ignite a conflict that poets would sing of for centuries. When Paris arrived as a guest, he was welcomed with royal hospitality. Yet the spark between him and Helen was instant, fated, and dangerous. Some say Aphrodite's magic clouded Helen's heart. Others say she followed Paris by her own will. Either way, one night they left Sparta together and sailed toward Troy. When Menelaus discovered the betrayal, his anger turned cold and silent. He went to his brother Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae, and demanded justice. Agamemnon saw more than a family insult. He saw an opportunity to unite the Greek kingdoms under his command. Soon heralds were sent across the Aegean, calling every king and warrior to arms. Among those who answered was Achilles, the unmatched warrior of Phthia. His mother, the sea nymph Thetis, knew his fate. If Achilles went to Troy, he would gain eternal glory but die young. If he stayed, he would live a quiet, forgotten life. Achilles chose glory. Another was Odysseus, the clever king of Ithaca, who at first tried to avoid the war by pretending madness but was quickly exposed. Soon, a vast army gathered at Aulis. Ships lined the coast, their sails ready to catch the wind toward Troy. Yet before they could depart, the winds died. The goddess Artemis had been angered, and she demanded a terrible price. Agamemnon had to sacrifice his daughter Iphigenia to appease the gods. Torn between duty and love, he gave the order. The wind rose again. The fleet set sail. Let's move across the sea to Troy, a city of marble towers and bronze gates, proud and rich from trade. King Priam ruled with wisdom. His wife, Queen Hecuba, watched the horizon each evening, praying for her son's safe return. When Paris arrived with Helen, the Trojans rejoiced at first, admiring her beauty. But not all shared the joy. Priam's elder son, Hector, the city's greatest warrior, foresaw disaster. He warned that Helen's presence would bring ruin to their people. Still, the gods had already chosen the path. The Greek fleet appeared on the horizon like a floating forest. Thousands of men disembarked, setting up camp along the shore near Troy. They sent envoys to demand Helen's return. Priam refused. Thus began the long and bitter siege that would last for 10 years. The first battles were fierce and chaotic. Greek heroes clashed with Trojan defenders outside the city walls. Spears shattered shields, and the earth trembled under chariots. Achilles, swift as a storm, led his myrmidons through the enemy ranks, while Hector rode his chariot like a blazing comet. Yet the walls of Troy stood firm. No assault could break them. Years passed. The war became a test of endurance. The Greeks built wooden huts along the shore and lived as though the battlefield were their home. Skirmishes continued, but no side gained the upper hand. Behind the blood and valor lay fatigue and loss. Let us drift into one of those long evenings by the fire when the soldiers told tales of home. They missed their families, their lands, and the peaceful sound of village life. Yet the oath they swore bound them to fight until Helen was returned. Inside the city, the Trojans lived under constant fear, but also with pride. The women tended the wounded and prayed at the temples. The children played near the gates, their laughter echoing faintly above the sound of distant war drums. The gods themselves watched the conflict with divided hearts. Athena favored the Greeks. Aphrodite shielded the Trojans. Zeus tried to maintain balance, though his thunder often echoed across the sky as a reminder that even kings and heroes were only pieces in a divine game. The 10th year was approaching, and the Greeks were growing weary. Supplies dwindled, tempers rose, and rivalries burned among their leaders. In the middle of this tension, a new spark of conflict was about to turn friend against friend and bring the war to its darkest days. The wrath of Achilles. When pride shook the Greek camp, let us drift back to the Greek camp by the shore, where the morning sun glimmered across bronze armor and restless hearts. 10 long years had worn the soldiers thin. The city of Troy still stood unbroken behind its towering walls. Inside the camp, tension was spreading like a slow fire. It was not the Trojans who caused it this time, but pride among the Greeks themselves. At the heart of that storm stood two men: Agamemnon, the mighty commander of the Greek host, and Achilles, the greatest warrior of all. They had fought side by side for years, but their spirits were too powerful to share peace for long. One day, after a successful raid on a Trojan ally, the Greeks divided the spoils of victory. Among them were two captive women, Chryses and Briseis. Agamemnon claimed Chryses, while Achilles took Briseis. But when the father of Chryses, a priest of Apollo, came to the camp begging for his daughter's return, Agamemnon refused. The old man prayed to Apollo, and soon a terrible plague swept through the Greek ranks. Soldiers fell ill one after another. At last Achilles called an assembly. He spoke boldly, urging Agamemnon to return the girl and end the god's wrath. The proud king agreed, but only if he could take Briseis from Achilles in exchange. The words struck like a spear. Achilles, insulted beyond measure, turned his back on the army he had fought to protect. He withdrew to his tent and swore not to fight again. Without Achilles, the Greeks lost their fiercest weapon. His friend Patroclus watched him in silence, sensing the weight of destiny. Outside, the war raged on. Without their champion, the Greeks began to falter. Hector and the Trojans pressed the advantage, driving the enemy back to their ships. Let's float over to the battlefield. The sound of war filled the air. Spears flew, shields cracked. The dust rose thick with sweat and blood. Hector's courage became the hope of Troy. He led his men beyond the city gates, striking deep into the Greek lines. His chariot thundered through the sand. The Greeks, desperate and disorganized, struggled to hold their ground. Meanwhile, Achilles sat apart, his heart burning with quiet rage. He knew his absence doomed his comrades, yet his pride kept him still. In his tent, he spoke to his mother, Thetis, who came from the sea to comfort him. Achilles asked her to plead with Zeus to punish the Greeks for dishonoring him. And so the gods shifted the balance once again. Zeus favored Troy. The tide of battle turned sharply. Greek defenses broke. Their ships began to burn. The smoke rose high, visible even from the walls of Troy, where Queen Hecuba and Helen watched with anxious hearts. Among the Greeks, panic spread. Odysseus urged the men to fight back, while Ajax stood firm, his massive shield protecting those around him. Still, without Achilles, their strength was incomplete. Patroclus could no longer bear to watch his brothers die. He begged Achilles to let him go into battle wearing his armor. Achilles agreed, but warned him not to pursue the Trojans too far. His only command was to save the ships and return. When Patroclus entered the field dressed in Achilles' gleaming armor, hope surged through the Greek lines. The Trojans thought Achilles had returned. They fell back in fear. Patroclus fought bravely, driving them away from the burning ships. His sword flashed, his voice rang out like thunder. But victory can make even the cautious forget their limits. Let's follow him deeper into the fight. The Trojans fled toward their gates. Among them stood Hector, unyielding as ever. When Patroclus challenged him, the Prince of Troy turned his chariot and faced him head-on. The two met in a single fateful clash. Hector struck, and Patroclus fell. As his life faded, he whispered a prophecy that Achilles would soon come for him. The news reached Achilles at sunset. When he heard that his friend was gone, the world around him seemed to go silent. His pride melted away, replaced by a grief so deep it tore through his very being. He fell to the ground, crying out to the heavens. Thetis heard his cry and rose from the sea. She knew what her son would ask, and she knew what it would cost him. She went to Hephaestus, the god of fire, and begged him to forge new armor for her son. The god agreed and worked through the night, shaping bronze that shone like starlight. On the shield, he carved the story of life itself, the sea, the earth, and the endless cycle of war and peace. When Achilles put on that armor, he became more than a man. He became a force of destiny. He stood before his troops, his eyes burning with vengeance, his voice calm and cold. Even Agamemnon, once defiant, now stepped aside. The Greeks followed him to battle as if the gods themselves had risen among them. Let's drift once more to the walls of Troy where Hector stood waiting. He knew Achilles was coming. He knew this day would decide not only his life but the fate of his city. His wife Andromache begged him not to fight, holding their infant son close. But Hector kissed her hand and said that no man can escape his fate. Outside the gates, the air grew heavy. The dust began to tremble under the steps of Achilles' charge. The clash that followed was swift and terrible. No warrior could match him. He cut through the Trojan ranks until he found Hector standing alone. The two faced each other beneath the setting sun. Around them, the armies watched in silence. Hector threw his spear first, but Achilles deflected it. Then Achilles struck, and the prince of Troy fell. As his life slipped away, Hector begged for his body to be returned to his family. Achilles, still lost in rage, refused. He tied Hector's body to his chariot and dragged it back to the Greek camp. The gods watched in sorrow. Even they could not turn the tide of fate. The fall of Troy. When fire ended an empire, let's drift into the silence that followed Hector's death. The battlefield lay still under the dim light of dawn. The Trojans mourned behind their walls. Their greatest protector was gone. In the Greek camp, Achilles sat beside the ashes of Patroclus. His armor was stained, his heart empty. The songs of victory sounded hollow. Even the gods turned their eyes away from his grief. King Priam, an old man burdened with sorrow, could not rest. His city wept for Hector, and yet his father's heart could not bear the thought of his son's body lying in the enemy's camp. Guided by courage and grief, Priam made a journey no king had ever dared. Under cover of night, he rode across the plain and entered the Greek camp alone. He found Achilles sitting by the fire. The warrior looked up in surprise as the aged king knelt before him. Priam kissed the hands that had killed his son and said quietly, "Remember your own father, Achilles. Have pity on me." The words pierced through the walls of rage that had caged Achilles' soul. For the first time in years, he wept. He saw not an enemy but a father, broken by love. In that moment, he returned Hector's body. Together they shared a silent meal, two men bound by loss rather than hatred. The next morning, Priam carried his son home. For 12 days Troy mourned, and even the gods held their peace. But peace could not last. The war had no mercy for those who lingered in grief. Achilles himself soon met his fate. Paris, guided by Apollo, shot a single arrow that struck his heel, the one place his mother's magic had not protected. The greatest warrior of Greece fell. His death shook the camp. They buried him by the sea, where the waves would forever whisper his name. Let's float forward through the final years of the siege. Without Achilles, the Greeks seemed once again lost. Yet cunning replaced strength. Among them was Odysseus, whose mind was sharper than any sword. He saw that no force could breach Troy's mighty walls, so he turned to strategy rather than battle. A plan was born in secret. The Greeks pretended to abandon the war. They burned their tents, sailed away from the shore, and left behind a single enormous wooden horse. It stood tall and silent, gleaming in the morning sun. Inside it, hidden within the hollow belly, were select warriors led by Odysseus himself. From the walls, the Trojans watched in wonder. They believed the war was over. Scouts found the empty beach and the strange horse left as an offering. Some warned it was a trap. The priest Laocoon shouted that Greeks never give gifts without deceit. But before he could act, two giant serpents rose from the sea and crushed him and his sons before the horrified crowd. The Trojans saw it as a divine sign. They believed the horse was sacred to Athena. With shouts of triumph, they dragged the horse through the city gates. The people celebrated through the night. Fires lit the streets. Music filled the air. Helen herself walked among them, her face half-shadowed by torchlight, listening as the city rejoiced. Yet in her heart she felt unease. As midnight deepened, the fires burned low. The city slept. Then a small sound broke the silence, the creak of wood. A hidden hatch opened, and one by one the Greek warriors emerged. They moved like ghosts through the streets, silent and swift. They opened the gates for the army that had returned under the cover of darkness. Let's follow the moment the gates swung wide. The full Greek host poured in. Flames rose. The shouts of victory mixed with cries of terror. The mighty city of Troy, once a beacon of power and pride, was consumed by fire. King Priam fell in his own palace, struck down before the altar. Queen Hecuba was taken captive. The warriors who had survived the 10 long years of siege now faced ruin and loss. The temples burned, and the sea glowed red beneath the dawn. Only a few Trojans escaped. Among them was Aeneas, who carried his father on his back and led a small band away from the flames. His journey would one day give birth to another legend, the founding of Rome, but that is another story. When the sun rose over the ruins, the war was over. 10 years of struggle had ended in ash. The Greeks sailed homeward, yet few found peace. The gods punished many for their cruelty and pride. Odysseus wandered the seas for years. Agamemnon returned home only to face betrayal. None who had touched Troy left untouched by fate. Let's drift over the silent plain one last time. The wind moves through the grass where heroes once stood. The walls of Troy are gone, yet their story endures. It lives in the memory of poets and in the whisper of the Aegean waves. The Trojan War was not just a tale of love and revenge. It was a mirror of the human soul, a story of pride, destiny, and the fragile bond between glory and ruin. And so, the Song of Troy never truly ends. It lingers in the echo of every fallen empire, reminding us that even the greatest walls cannot protect against the power of fate.